Wow. 50 to 75 seniors in one room, all in one room. At least I can be guaranteed that they're going to listen. Emily, could you please guard that door and don't let anybody leave? I want to ensure I have a captive audience.
I can do that for sure, but you have to like yell into the microphone. Or do that.
Prior to starting, I would like to share with you that the creation of the RIDE program was one of the best decisions ever made by the BOAA board. It accommodated many people who were isolated and provided them with opportunities to socialize and participate in the programs offered in the center. They were always so appreciative of the van driver, and that is what made this volunteer experience so satisfying and enjoyable for me personally. As an aside, every Tuesday, when anybody was looking for me, my wife would advise them that I was in Bowmanville picking up chicks. I've titled my presentation today, Driving with Mr. Davey. Prior to COVID, I had the best and most satisfying volunteer gig anywhere. I drove every Tuesday for 7 years, transporting fellow housebound seniors to the Tuesday lunch and other scheduled programs. Needless to say, over the years, my passengers and I became good friends. We shared stories, jokes, and life experiences with each other. We had many laughs and some sadness. Fun was the operative word during our travels together. There were many memories and of the relationship I developed over the years. Every individual, including those no longer with us, enriched my life and made me a better person. I would like now to share with you some of the stories I noted in my van driver's diary. These are our shared memories. In most cases, I have changed the names, and the names have been changed to protect the guilty. This show contains stories of humor and immature themes. Listener discretion is advised. On my first day of driving the van, I knew I was in for some interesting and challenging times as a van driver. Do any of you know the meaning of the word soporific? Soporific is defined as after you eat a meal, there's a tendency to induce drowsiness and sleepiness. Maybe that explains why us seniors need an afternoon nap. On my very first day on the job, when picking up passengers to take them home after the Tuesday lunch, I leaned over, a very well-known BOA member, jumped in the front seat and declared loudly, "Okay, Dave, get me home, I'm ready for bed." Laughter was heard from her fellow passengers. I leaned over and repeated this comment over the 6 years that I drove her to and from the luncheon. Many of you know Ian, a well-known Scottish member of our clan here at the center. And by the way, I haven't changed his name. Ian was a new driver and was not familiar with the streets and geography of Bowmanville, as he lived in Newcastle. One day he was directed to pick up a female passenger at the Bowmanville swimming pool. He had no idea where the Bowmanville pool was located. After making some inquiries, he eventually picked up Karaoke, the designated female passenger at the Allen Strike pool on Liberty Street. Upon leaving the pool, at the intersection of Liberty Street, Ian turned south on Liberty Street. Karaoke was somewhat disconcerted and flustered. She questioned why he was driving in the opposite direction from the BOAA. Karaoke then declared assertively, "Aren't you taking me to Lover's Lane?" Over the many years I have known Ian, it was the only time Ian was rendered speechless. Does anybody remember this slogan, the marketing slogan for Mary Brown's Chickens?
Best legs in town.
That's right, Mary Brown has the best legs in town. One of my favorite people who I picked up was Mary Brown, and that is her real name. She was a real sweetheart. Every Tuesday when I picked her up, I would introduce her to her fellow passengers. This young lady is Mary Brown. She has the best legs in town. Mary always responded with an adolescent giggle. After a couple of months, her passenger friends decided to give me a taste of my own medicine with the following comments. Dave's buns, buns to drool over. Dave's buns, good to the last bite. Dave's buns, baked to perfection. As a designated van driver, safety of our passengers was a primary concern. Included in this responsibility was the confirmation that all the seat belts had been fastened. Occasionally connecting the seat belt could be a challenge for the ladies. One day, Rose Bush, who was sitting in the middle between two other ladies, requested my assistance in connecting her seat belt. Reaching precariously over the lady sitting beside Rose Bush, it was then that I discovered that Rose was actually sitting on the attachment button. Requiring interesting and challenging touching and reaching on my part, I was eventually successful in connecting the seatbelt. Censorship rules prevent me from sharing the comments from the three ladies. They would make a sailor blush. As a regular Tuesday van driver, you learn very quickly that being late to pick up the three dead ladies at the Bowmanville Creek retirement home borders on catastrophe. Affectionately called the Bobbsey twins +1, they were unrestrained in expressing their unhappiness at the possibility of being late for the Tuesday lunch. Apparently they had sat at the same table with their friends since the Tuesday lunches originally started. Although rushed, upon arrival at the center, I removed the walkers from the back of the van and then proceeded to help the ladies out of the van. It was only then that I noticed that I had not put the brakes on the walkers. I chased after them as they rolled down the driveway, narrowly missing a car exiting the south parking lot and coming to rest in the lawn of the house next door. With some effort, I retrieved the walkers and turned them over to their respective owners. I am pleased to report that I got them to the lunch on time. Stella, one of my favorite grandmothers, loves to share family stories during our trips to the center, especially relative to her grandchildren. She proudly advised that she had been blessed with 6 great-grandchildren, born during the last 6 months of the pandemic. Stella affectionately called them my pandemic babies. Apparently working at home has a different meaning for young married couples compared to what it means to us older and wiser seniors. Stella also told the story of her precocious 3-year-old granddaughter who, when visiting the Oshawa Zoo, declared assertively at the ticket wicket, "Don't forget to give the old lady a senior discount." Stella also shared that her 7-year-old grandson had proudly disclosed at a large family gathering that his grandfather had been in the army and had killed 20 men single-handedly. He was the cook. Please allow me to briefly move off my script, my prepared script, and permit me to do something I've always wanted to do. Ever since joining the BOA theater group here at the BOA, I've aspired for a long time to demonstrate my unique acting talents. Now that I have a captive audience, please allow me to fulfill my dream. Are you ready? Stella! Just staying off script, I was just reminded by my wife of the time I was driving one evening, and it was ladies' evening at the BOAA, and they had a male policeman stripper come to the show. And it was obvious that apparently that excited the ladies quite a bit, because I had a hell of a time driving home with them that evening. One of our responsibilities as a BOA van driver is to complete a detailed checklist of the mechanical components of the van prior to the start of and I do that prior to the start of the day. I also search the interior of the van in case of lost articles from the previous use of the van. One time I found the following clothing article in the very back of the van. As a man, I'm totally stupid as to when and where this would be used.
Right on.
If by chance this belongs to any woman in the audience, please reclaim it after the show. The only condition is that you help me understand why and when you would wear it. Speaking of acting, for the past 5 years I've been a member of the BOA theater group. A couple of years ago, I had the lead role in a play involving memorizing a very lengthy script. As many of you may know, memory is a challenge for many of us seniors. Because of my galloping senility, I pasted my script inside the Toronto Sun newspaper. At one point in the play, while reading the newspaper, I announced that the Toronto Maple Leafs had won the Stanley Cup the previous evening. Out of the audience, someone yells, "How old's the newspaper?" I easily recognized the voice as that of one of my favorite regular van pickups. Later in the show, there was another interactive experience with a member of the audience. Throughout the play, I had been sitting in a very comfortable but very low Chesterfield. When it came time for the curtain call, at the end of the performance, despite effort, I could not get out of the Chesterfield. It was at that point that I leaned over, got out of her front row seat, walked towards me, and extended her cane to pull me up. One of my snobbish regulars, Hyacinth Bouquet, spelled B-U-C-K-E-T, took her 4-year-old grandson and 6-year-old granddaughter to church. She crossed her fingers that they would not humiliate or embarrass her. On the way to church, Hyacinth asked her granddaughter, "Why is it important to be quiet in church?" The granddaughter's response, "Because there are people sleeping." During the service, the minister was giving a rather animated but listless sermon. When the minister stopped briefly to catch his breath, Hyacinth's grandson yelled out, "Blah, blah, 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 blah," which echoed throughout the church. Laughter broke out from the congregation. The minister was unable to finish the sermon. Also, Mrs. Bouquet, spelled B-U-C-K-E-T, and her husband were leaving the church. He leaned over and whispered to his wife, "I've just passed some gas. It was silent. What should I do?" Hyacinth responded, "You need to change the batteries in your hearing aids." One of my passengers, known to me as Stephanie Von Pompous, shared that when she was doing her graduate degree at university, she'd done her thesis on men who inhabited bars. She also indicated that when she was younger, she was really quite attractive. She described her experience as follows. She would frequent local bars and search out male clients. After a brief introduction and friendly discussion with the young man, she would yell out for all to hear, "Go to bed with you!" resulting in an embarrassed and shocked response from the young man. She repeated this questioning with a number of other men in the bar. Finally, she decides it's time to approach the young man and explain the premise of her experiment. She approaches the one young man who was particularly upset and explains to him in detail what she was doing. The young man responds by yelling out, $50! Mortimer Snurd, known by many of his friends as Mortimer Nerd, recalled a story while attending a party. The center of attention was a drop-dead, gorgeous woman who was understandably surrounded by a large group of men. Unbeknown to anyone, this young woman had lost an eye many years ago. The replaced glass eye suddenly fell out and was caught by Mortimer Snurd. When it came time to leave the party, the beautiful young lady approached Mortimer Snurd and requested that he walk her home. He was shocked and asked, with all these other available men, why have you chosen me? Are you ready for it? Because you caught my eye. Neil Down shared a story at the time he had a very important meeting scheduled with some of the top managers at the BOAA. The night before, he put his selected clothes in the washing machine so he would be presentable for the meeting. Upon his arrival the next day, he sat down at the big table in the boardroom opposite four management representatives from the BOAA. During a more boring time in the meeting, Neil Down subconsciously reached inside his suit jacket and felt something attached to the inner lining of his jacket. Without thinking, he pulled out the object, resulting in loud laughter from the managers. Neil Down quickly discovered that he had pulled out his granddaughter's colorful panties. Moral of the story, always remember to put fleecy sheets in the dryer to avoid static cling. I would like to share a personal story with you. Our house is located next door to a young family, Christine and Aaron, who are both police officers. We get along very well and we're really good neighbors. Last year they installed a pool in their backyard. And our back deck overlooks their pool. We can observe everything. One early afternoon, after letting the dog out and doing some yard work, I was walking up the stairs to the deck when I heard a frantic shout and squeal from Christine, begging me not to look over the fence as she ran for cover. It was apparent that she had come out of the pool wearing only her birthday suit. Regardless, I assured her I'd seen nothing. Regardless, her face flushed bright red with embarrassment. To prevent a repeat incident, I decided to install a horn on my deck, which I would toot every time I came out on the deck. Word got around the neighborhood that the young housewives would visit with Aaron and Christine on their back deck and regale themselves with laughter every time I came out on the back deck and sounded the horn. A couple of weeks later, Aaron, the husband, revealed that the raison d'etre for their weekly parties was so that the partiers could hear the old guy toot his horn. I'm sure you are aware that one of the most challenging aspects of being a senior is adapting to the computer, iPhones, and social media. Justin Case shared that he was having trouble comprehending all the acronyms used by others on the social media, for example, LOL. So he developed a list of his own for seniors. BYOT, bring your own teeth. BTW, bring the walker. WTP, where are the prunes? DWI, driving while incontinent. and LMDO, laughing my diaper off. Just in Case also enjoyed accessing Facebook for stories and jokes. Here are some examples shared by himself and other van passengers. During COVID, a sign on the door at the Curtis Recreational Center read, "When the pool opens, due to social distancing, there will be no water in lanes 1, 3, and 5. With the tax season approaching, Just in Case phone Canada revenue relative to a question he had. He listened to the following voice message. "Your call is very important to us. Please enjoy the 40-minute flute solo." Just read on Facebook, "Lonely man seeks wife." He had 265 replies. All of them saying, "You can have mine." Apparently the circuses are struggling to find new clowns as top prospects continue to go into politics. Thanks, Joe. A bumper sticker read, "I'm speeding because I have to get there before I forget where I'm going." Good advice was offered. The next time you get a phone call from a blocked or unknown number, answer and whisper, "It's done. There's blood everywhere." Then hang up. I'm sure many of you would agree stories about health and the golden years are a dominant topic of conversation amongst seniors. One day I picked up Willie Macon, an 84-year-old regular, to transport to the BOAA. While driving Willie, he shared with me that tomorrow he was having a colonoscopy. He then shared that he had just drank a terrible tasting drink as prescribed by his doctor. I immediately turned the van around and headed back to his apartment. Willie opened the door before I had stopped and ran like a bat out of hell to the public washroom. I can confirm that an 84-year-old can run the 4-minute mile when required. During the golden years, life has its ups and downs. At exercise class, we call that squats. During the golden years, my body creaked so much that my doctor wrote a prescription for WD-40. During the golden years, a retired husband is a wife's full-time job. During the latter years of life, a husband said to his wife, "I don't know why you wear a bra. You have nothing to put in it." Her response, "You wear pants, don't you?" Thank you. I just appreciate the laughter. Tim Tinkle shouted from the very back of the van, "The golden age, my foot. The only thing golden is the color of my urine." One day, one of the ladies noted that recently when she went to the dentist, she questioned why dentists are now making you wear goggles or sunglasses during your dental appointment. Les Plack, a man who thinks he knows it all, advised he knew the answer. He shared that during a recent dental appointment, when seated in the collapsible chair, a young, rather effeminate young man pranced in and advised, "I have to put on these goggles on you for your protection." He indicated that the dental hygienist would be in very shortly. After a brief wait, the attractive hygienist entered. Les Plack observed that she was quite well endowed. During the appointment, every time when she bent over to clean his teeth, her bosom would press a guess-you-know-where on his face. Les Plack declared he was convinced that that was the reason we are now obligated to wear sunglasses and goggles when we go to the dentist. As some of you may know, I was a probation officer for many years working with young offenders. Colleen, 17 years old, was under my supervision after her release from the Lindsay Training School for Girls. Colleen had aspired to be a hairdresser and had worked hard to achieve this goal. The last remaining test of the licensing requirements was for Colleen to shave a man with a straight razor. She asked me if I would volunteer. After some reluctance and a degree of trepidation, I consented to be her model. During the test, Colleen lathered my face, sharpened the straight razor, and she was understandably nervous. When the inspector overseeing the test was looking over her shoulder, her nervousness became more pronounced, manifested with shaking hands as she commenced shaving my face and neck. My anxiety and apprehension multiplied. I am pleased to report that I survived, and Colleen successfully passed the shaving test and earned her hairdressing license. Every week after our strength training for men's class, 5 or 6 of the guys go to the BOAA cafe for coffee and discuss a broad range of male topics, jokes, the problems of the world. Seymour Chest, our 90-year-old ageless wonder, asked us, "Have you ever had an ultrasound at the Bowmanville Hospital?" She shared that recently he had a full-body ultrasound administered by a rather attractive technician. Seymour Chest said, "It really was very thorough. As the technician started at the top of my neck and was moving downward, it was when she moved towards the lower part of the groin area that he became extremely anxious and uncomfortable." Seymour Chest was very relieved and said, "The fruit of my loom did not and could not rise on the occasion." I should have known that picking up my wife in a BOA van would prove interesting and risky. Anyone who knows my wife would acknowledge that she shoots from the hip and is not reluctant to express herself. There is no restraints when it comes to my wife Susan. One afternoon I picked her up and was joined in the van by twin sisters, Winnie and Minnie Moose. As we were driving to the center, both Winnie and Minnie shared that they had been experiencing severe back pain for the past 3 months. Susan enthusiastically advised that she had a special back rub administered by me, her husband, guaranteed to reduce back pain. Susan described that facing each other, my husband joins his hands behind my back and gives me a vibrating rub. Susan groans and moans loudly during the 1-minute exercise. Relieved of pain, Susan declares that I have always dreamed that we could patent that exercise. It's almost better than an orgasm. I blushed with embarrassment. Then I noticed that Winnie leaned over towards my wife and asked, "Where and when can I schedule an appointment?" Minnie followed with, "Me too, me too." One of my regular passengers, Paige Turner, had attended a private boys' boarding school in the 50s. Because I attended a similar school, Justin Case wanted to share the following story with me. Paige wanted to share the following story with me. I want you to visualize being in a chemistry class, and the dais is higher. The 15-year-old boys, all of us were sitting in the well of the classroom, and on the dais was one of our favorite chemistry teachers. He had been in school for 50 years, looked a lot like Goodbye Mr. Chips, and he wore a gown, and he had these Coca-Cola bottle glasses, and he really enjoyed teaching the boys, but he also knew the boys could be a little challenging. So he said, "Today we're going to do an experiment, boys, and I'm not going to allow you to do it because the results would be disastrous." So he starts to mix, and he said, "It's when we mix these two beakers together that unless I do it myself, the results would be disastrous." So he starts to mix the two beakers.